my name is Chloe, and today I'm here with my second half of May wrap up. So, this is the first month I'm trying this, splitting the wrap up into two parts, and so far you guys seem to like it. I like it because it's a little more manageable and it seems to be working. So, let's just roll with it. So, in the second half of May, now it's not exactly the second half because I film on weekends. So, my first half was May 1st through the 13th, and I will link that down below. And then now this is the 14th through the 31st. So, in that time, I read 17 books, which is more books than the first half. However, the average page length was 241 pages. So my total pages was 4,090, which is really not that much more than the first half of the month. It's 227 pages per day, which is less. I read 11 novels and 6 chapter books, so that's 11 adult books and 6 middle grade books. And that's why I read so many more books, is because my daughter and I you'll see we got on a roll with the cul-de-sac kids and just didn't stop. So, as far as rating goes, I had 4 3-stars, 3 3.5 stars, 9 4-stars, 1 4.5 star. So the average was 3.71. And like I said, we really got on a tear with these middle grade books. And I think that's kind of what skewed things, because we really are having a good time with the series, which means I rank them like a 4, rate them like a 4. And that kind of drives everything up. I read 10 on my shelf and 7 not on my shelf, which is really good. Compared to the first half, I read 2 on my shelf, but the first half of the month I was doing a lot of NetGalley. So this time I did 4 from Libby, 6 from NetGalley, 6 off my shelf, and 1 from Hoopla. So the only ones I read off my shelf were the middle grade. I did 4 audiobooks, 6 e-arcs, which when I say an e-arc, I categorize it as that because oftentimes I will get both the audio and ebook from NetGalley, and that's not always the case, but I always try to, so I can go kind of back and forth and do whatever. So I don't really want to put it hard one way or the other. And then I've got 6 trade paperbacks, which of course is my middle grade books. I read 5 new releases and 12 backlist. So one of the NetGalleys that I did read was an audio new release of a book that had already been released. I read 6 contemporary, which is what I call the middle grade. So that's the middle grades are contemporary. 5 women's fiction, 4 mystery thriller, 1 romance, and 1 nonfiction. So that is all the stats for the second half of the month. So for my own personal reading, it was 5 women's fiction, 4 mystery thrillers, and then 1 romance and 1 nonfiction. And that is exactly how I would choose it if I could do it all over. If I could do every month with no TBR, nothing, I think that's about the ratio that I would do. Because I love women's fiction, I love thrillers, and then I love to dabble in other things. So let's just get into the book. So the first one I read is My Wife is Missing by DJ Palmer, and I gave this 4 stars. So I was talking about this with Nicole from the Girly Girl Bookworm because she read this and loved it. I read it and I still gave it 4 stars. I really enjoyed it, but this is about a book about this man and his wife and 2 kids. They go to New York City, I think, for just a little vacation, and he goes out to get pizza for the family, and he comes back and they're all gone. The wife and kids are missing, but he sees his little son's teddy bear, and he's he would never leave his teddy bear. Something strange is going on. So he gets the cops involved because he's were they taken? What happened? And there's a lot of signs indicating that they chose to leave. And then we also get the wife's perspective. So we know what's going on with them. And we follow both perspectives throughout the story to figure out what's happening and why, basically. So my complaints about this book are there are a lot of things that just don't add up and that really don't make sense. And the whole cat and mouse thing got really redundant in the middle, so it slowed down a lot for me. I think if you are the type of person that can do a one sitting read, maybe that's the best way to do this book, because like I said, the cat and mouse stopping and starting during that made it kind of hard to pick it back up. Also, our main character, her I don't want to say too much, but she is strongly one way and then she kind of flips another way. She just doesn't seem to have opinions of her own, and I really hate that in a heroine. So I gave it 4 stars because it was really I love DJ Palmer's writing style, and it just flowed really well, and it was entertaining, but not the best book I've read, and definitely not the best DJ Palmer. Then we read No Grownups Aloud, which is one of the cul-de-sac kids. I can't remember what number it is, but I gave that one 4 stars. Those are by Beverly Lewis, and this one is about Jason. He is home with his grandmother because his parents are out of town. He suffers from ADD or maybe ADHD, and so he, with his grandmother, he's like, cool, I can not take my meds and I can eat as much chocolate as I want. So he kind of takes advantage of the situation, and it's what happens with that. Then I read Night Music by Jojo Moyes, and I didn't love this book. This is about a woman who her husband dies and leaves them with nothing, and so they no longer can like support their lifestyle. It's her and her kids, and they can't live the life that they've been living. So she inherits this old rundown house from her uncle who has just died. So she decides to go. It's a super rural area, and the house is falling apart. Luckily, one of her like neighbors is like, hey, I'm a contractor, I'll help you fix it up. However, this neighbor, he and his wife had been taking care of the old man, and the old man had promised the house to them. So he's really resentful about the fact that he did not get the house. So his motivations are a little sinister. So I just think Jojo Moyes, I have to really love a character or the plot or something to love her or to like her books, really, because I just don't like the writing style. And so I gave this one 3 stars. It wasn't bad. If you're a fan of her, definitely check it out. If you're not, don't start here. And if like, I don't know. It was all right. Then we've got Frog Power, which is another Beverly Lewis cul-de-sac kids. Gave this 4 stars. This is about the kids all bringing their pets to show and tell and doing like they're trying to do a pet parade. One of them has a frog. Stacy is really scared of it, and so it's her kind of coming to terms with that. There is a lot of discussion about divorced parents and things and that. So that was kind of a weird thing to talk about with my 4-year-old. It was definitely above her head in some ways, but if you have an older kid who is either going through that or has friends going through that, I think this would be a really great read. Next is The Unplanned Life of Josie Hale by Stephanie Eating, and this one I gave 4.5 stars. I really loved this book. This is a women's fiction that is like my cup of tea. It has so many tropes that I love. It's first crush, kind of second chance, pregnancy, women's fiction, found family, just love it. So it's about this woman. She is pregnant by her husband. They kind of like their marriage was failing, and they kind of had a last ditch like, can we save this thing? Well, that night or like the next day or something, she finds him with somebody else, and so she's like, all right, done, out, goodbye. And so she is pregnant, single, all of that. She goes to the county fair because she's got this like hankering for fried food. So she goes and she runs into one of her high school best friends, and he now lives with her high school crush. They both were high school friends, and they were like kind of a group, but she really had a crush on this guy in high school. So they're like, hey, kind of in similar situations. Like, I think they're all late 20s, early 30s, and all kind of like struggling to get their lives together. And so they're like, hey, come live with us, because she's living with her parents now. So she's like, hey, come live with us. It'll save us money, like, because we'll split the bills more ways, and it'll get you out of your parents' house. And she's like, cool, win, win, win. So she goes to live with them, and they become a found family, and this baby becomes their baby. And one of them, her crush, has a child that is now like 11, because I think it was a high school, a product of the high school relationship. And so it's like 11. So I guess that would tell you about how old they are. But anyway, it's just, I love the single dad. I love the found family. I love the way these guys like protect her. And this is super foodie because she's pregnant and she's got all these cravings. And as a pregnant lady, I was like, oh my gosh, this is making me hungry for stuff that like I don't have available to me. And it was just fun. It was a really good read, 4.5 stars. Next is The Mystery of Case to Luck. That is another cul-de-sac kids book. I gave it 4 stars. This one I think was my daughter's favorite, and I think that's so fun. Like, we've got another thriller reader on our hands, I hope, because this is about Duncan. He loves basketball, and he loves basketball so much that his friends start to get annoyed because he's choosing basketball over like hanging out with them. And so somebody takes his basketball, and it's a signed basketball. It's a really big deal. And they start leaving him clues to find his basketball. And it was super fun. Super predictable for an adult to read, but it was really a fun time, like watching him trying to crack all these clues, because they would do it in like Morse code and different codes and things. And it was a lot of fun. Next is Come Here Often by Ellie Center, I think. And I gave this one 3 stars. And the reason is because it's so mismarketed. So you see the illustrated cover, you kind of read the back, and you think it's this fun rom-com about this girl who is kind of down on her luck. She's lost her job, she's lost her boyfriend or fiance or something, and she finds solace in this gym. And she starts a romance with a personal trainer, but it's definitely not a romance. And it's definitely not lighthearted. This is about a woman who suffers very, very badly with anxiety. And she calls it her big A. And her anxiety has her trapped in this gym. She is scared to death of leaving the gym because everything kind of fell apart in the gym. She got the call that she was no longer needed at her job. She got the call that her boyfriend was breaking up with her. And so she's in the gym, and she really does find working out and stuff comforting, which is totally not how she normally was. But this book really dives into crippling anxiety, and it's not lighthearted. It's really heavy. It gets really kind of redundant, but my biggest problem is the mismarketing. So it's definitely not a romance either. Like I said, there's a very minimal part where she has a relationship kind of with a personal trainer, but that doesn't even really manifest until the end. This is a women's fiction about anxiety, hard hitting. If you're going to pick it up, know what you're getting into. Next is Just Like Mother by Ann Heltzel. So this is a thriller. I gave 4 stars. And if you are a cult loving, if you love reading cult books, this is one for you. So this is about 2 girls, and I'm blanking on their names. I can't remember their names, but 2 girls that are cousins, I believe. And they are raised in this cult, basically. And it's the mothers. The mothers take care of them, and there's she refers to them by their physical traits. So mom with the blonde hair, mom with the baby, mom with this, and whatever. There's all these mothers. Well, one day they're out in the woods playing, and something scares our main character. And so she runs and makes this huge production, and both of the girls get sent to foster care. Everything kind of gets blown up, etc. So our main character gets adopted into a really nice family. She ends up having a pretty good life. And now it's years later, and she's been looking for her cousin, and then finally her cousin finds her. Well, her cousin didn't have quite as easy of a time in the foster care system, but everything, now she's married to a wealthy man. Everything seems to have worked out really well, and they kind of strike up a friendship. However, things aren't always what they seem. And that's all I'm going to leave it at as for now. I gave it 4 stars because our main character, again, her motivations were really unclear because when her cousin came into her life, she was kind of meh about it when she's been supposedly searching for ever. And so that was weird. And there were just a lot of things, again, that didn't quite add up for me, but it was still entertaining. Next, I read The Body Is Not an Apology by Sonia Renee Taylor. So this I gave 4 stars as well. This is a really powerful book about your body not being an apology. And whether that's fat phobia, racism, anything, you're you, and you deserve an equal spot in this world, and you deserve to be exactly who you are. And it discusses all the different ways our society is hard on people. And this is a really hard-hitting book, and I just loved listening to her perspective on some things. There were different parts that obviously meant more to me, but I think no matter who you are, you can find something in this that is empowering. She does talk a lot about radical self-love, which I think is so far advanced for some people. She talks about body acceptance and that kind of stuff, and how that's not enough. Whereas I feel you kind of have to meet people where they are, and body acceptance is a step towards this radical self-love, but getting all the way to radical self-love felt like leaps and bounds. So I still really liked it and would recommend it. Next is The Silent Sister by Diane Chamberlain. So I gave this one 3.5 stars. This is one of my least favorite Diane Chamberlains, but I read this for Krista from Books and Jams Patreon group. And it was really funny, in the chat about that, because all of us gave it, all except I think one, gave it 3.5, 4 stars. We all enjoyed the book. However, there's a lot that we had problems with. There are a lot of morally gray people. Well, not even gray, a lot of just not good people doing not good things. This is about a girl who, her dad has died. Her older sister, she's like youngest by far in her family. Like there's a sister and a brother, and then a big gap, and then her. And her older sister allegedly ran away, and committed suicide when she was young. When this little girl, I think she was like 2 or something. And now her dad has died, and she has to go back to his house to kind of like get things in order. And so there's people pressuring her to sell the house. That storyline is going on. Her brother is like, he has got some severe PTSD from being a war veteran, as well as a lot of hostility about the way their childhood was. And so he's kind of off the grid, doesn't want to be found. Our main character really tries to like strike up a relationship with him because he was so kind and great to her as a child. And so she's starting to find indication that there's more to the story with her sister. And so she tries to figure it out. Now that her dad is gone, she's looking through this stuff, finds this indication, and the story goes from there. So it, again, this one like was really far-fetched. It does happen, I think, in the 90s. So some of the things that happen are more believable because technology was less of a thing at that time. However, like I said, the fact that everybody in this book, even like the side characters, like a record store owner and stuff, like all of them are morally gray for sure. Like nobody does the right thing in this book. And I think that's a little hard to believe, but overall, it was a really entertaining read. The other thing I will warn you, if you are a huge fan of Diane Chamberlain, this one is the slowest start to her books that I have ever read. I love her books because most of the time they really like grip you either with the plot line or by instantly falling in love with the character. And that didn't happen for this book. So I kind of got lost in the doldrums until the story really got started, which was a solid chunk of the way through. So not her best, but still entertaining and definitely a good book club book if you're looking for that. Next is The Stinky Sneakers Mystery by Beverly Lewis. So this one I gave a 3 stars. This is another Cul-de-sac Kids. And this one, they're having a science fair, and Eric, I think, no, it's Jason again. It's Jason, the ornery little kid. He gets upset because he wants to win the science fair, and he's doing a lot of bragging and just not being very kind to people at all. And I just didn't feel like there was enough like turnaround on this book to like talk about the impact of bragging and being unkind to people. And it was more like retaliation as opposed to like talking about why that wasn't okay. So I gave it 3 stars. Next is Sing You Home by Jodi Picoult. I gave this one 3.5 stars. So this one I read right after, I think, The Silent Sister, and there's some similar themes in the book that like, now I'm like, okay, which was which happened in, like, which specific things happened in which. But Sing You Home is a book about a couple who are struggling with infertility. They have gone through IVF multiple times. They've had multiple miscarriages, etc. Well, the book opens and she's 28 weeks pregnant. Everything seems to be good. And she miscarries again. Well, at that point, it's a stillbirth, not a miscarriage. So she has a stillbirth. And that's not a spoiler. That happens right in the beginning of the book. So that is heartbreaking, as it would be. And it kind of dissolves their marriage. You know, he's like, you want a kid more than anything. I don't think I do anymore. I don't want to be married, etc. So they part ways. And then years later, I think, it's not too much later, but it's a while later, she has found love with somebody else and wants to use the rest of the embryos that they have. And he doesn't want that. He's living with his brother, and he is kind of a born-again Christian. His brother is a strong Christian. Okay, so my problems with this book are, like, my biggest glaring problem is the way they portray Christianity. It is very much like they reference Westboro Baptist Church, and I don't know if that's Jodi's way of like saying this is like a really extremist group of Christians, or like she doesn't say that. And so it feels like this is the way that Christians are, and that was really offensive to me as a Christian. I just felt like it was like this radical, conservative, judgmental, nasty people is how the Christians were portrayed. And that part really rubbed me wrong. As with most Jodi's, there is like some court scenes in there of these people kind of battling over these embryos. And as with all Jodi's, it really makes you think like, what is the right thing to do? Where do these embryos belong? And I'm not going to tell you any more about like the court case because I don't want to be spoilery, but it definitely had me thinking. It just really rubbed me wrong how she portrayed the Christian people in this book. Next is The Best Friend by Shalani Bolin. So this is a thriller. I really like Shalani Bolin. I gave this 4 stars. I think this is my second by her. I just read the other one, the first, recently. And this is about a woman who meets this new friend. She's a mom. She's kind of struggling. She's living above her means. She's got a husband and stuff. They're living kind of above their means and just don't really fit in. Like, she's trying to send her kid to the private school that her sister's kids go to, but she can't quite hack it. Like, it's just not working out. And she meets this mom who is significantly like more well off than she is. And this mom is like, hey, we're friends. Like, I'll help you out with this, that, and the other. And so she's like, great, great. However, then we start to question the friend's motives, and we start to notice that the friend is like getting controlling, and we start to notice that things are a little off. So Shalani Bolin, I feel like she does really good beginner thrillers. Like, if you are new to the genre and wanting to try it out, hers are very straightforward. Like, I would say if you've read a lot of thrillers, they're definitely predictable. For somebody just starting out, I feel like they're really great, straightforward domestic thrillers. And that's exactly what this one was. And I really enjoyed the ride and would recommend it. Next is Pickle Pizza by Beverly Lewis. So this is about Eric. He lives with his mom. He's got a single mom, and his dad has died, and his grandpa lives with them. And it is about Father's Day time, and everybody's making things, doing things for their dads. And he's like, I want to do something for my grandpa. But everything he tries, he kind of fails. Well, his grandpa loves pickles, and he loves pizza, so he decides to make him a pickle pizza. But is that a good idea? Is it not? And I just thought it was really cute. And Eric's heart was so sweet in this. And we read it like coincidentally at the perfect time because Father's Day is in like 2 weeks. So it really got my daughter's wheels turning about what she wants to do for Father's Day. Next is Billy and Me by Giovanna Fletcher. So Giovanna Fletcher, I love her. I love her. Her husband is Tom Fletcher, who's a famous musician in the UK. Not so much here in the States, but she herself she's written quite a few nonfiction books about motherhood, but she also has a pretty prolific backlist of novels that she writes as well. She also has a podcast called like Happy Mom, Happy Baby, and I just love her. I love her so much. And so Billy and Me is about a girl who lives in this small British town, and she works at this tea shop she lives with her mom, and she works at this tea shop who's run by an older lady who's like her best friend. And she's really content with her like quiet, single, small town life. Until one day their Pride and Prejudice, like they're filming an adaptation of Pride and Prejudice in her small town. Well, she's not up on like the stars and all the gossip and all that kind of stuff, so she doesn't know who anybody is, but she's secretly hoping it's Jude Law that's the star, that's Mr. Darcy. So she doesn't know. I mean, whatever. This guy comes into her tea shop at one day, and he is like clearly involved with the movie, but she thinks he's maybe like, just somebody behind the scenes. So they kind of strike up a friendship, and it's a few times before she realizes it's Billy Buskin who is the lead star, Mr. Darcy. And yet they now have struck up this friendship kind of relationship, and he pursues her quite a bit, and he falls for her pretty hard. And it's them trying to figure out their relationship and trying to figure out, can she be a celebrity's girlfriend, and is he genuine? And I gave it 4 stars because it is so over the top, kind of insta love on his part, that I was like, can we believe this? Like, does he have an ulterior motive? Like, I was kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop. And the conflict that comes in this book is something I think is realistic, but it was also pretty predictable. And I don't know, but I really liked the way it all ended up, and there is a sequel, and I will definitely read that. So I just love her, and like I said, I will read anything by her. Next is The Favor by Nora Murphy. So I gave this one 3 stars. This one, it's a thriller. So it's about this 2 women who are both victims of domestic abuse. One couple, it's a husband and wife that are both doctors. The other couple is a husband and wife who are both lawyers. And the husband is abusive in both relationships. Now, neither of them are really physically abusive yet, but they both are very controlling to the point that neither of the women are working. and their lives are just very, very controlled. Well, these women live a couple streets away. They kind of know about each other through different ways, and one does the other a favor, and then the other one has to return the favor. And the problem I have with this book is that you know the whole time who done it, what's going on, why, all that kind of stuff. You know exactly what's going on the entire time. There's a detective trying to figure out what's going on the whole time. So he doesn't know, and really that's the only tension or suspense in this book is like, is the detective going to figure out what's going on or not? And otherwise, it was like a whole bunch of pages of just kind of boring redundancy. So I like the concept, but the way it was done, the way that we were given everything as it happened before anybody else knew, made it kind of boring. Then the last one is Mailbox Mania by Beverly Lewis. So this is now around 4th of July in the Cul-de-sac Kids. They decide to do a contest where they all decorate their mailboxes for 4th of July and have a contest and have the one like house with no kids, his name is Mr. Tressler, have him judge the different mailboxes. And again, things get kind of nasty between the kids where they don't want to work together and there's just different things going on. I did point out that I've never noticed where this is like book 8, 9, 10, somewhere like that. And I've never noticed that all the cul-de-sac kids are one child in the family except for our Hunter family who has 4 kids, and they really can't figure out how to work together. And then all the other kids kind of get nasty too, which didn't really make sense to me of like why the problems with the other kids started, but it did. Again, 3.5 stars. It did really drive home like the cul-de-sac kids stick together, and I liked that it like brought it back to the friendship and what really mattered, but it just didn't like make sense. And I feel like all of these books kind of like we didn't get to see the mailboxes, and we didn't get to see like they give you most of the story but not quite enough, and I really wanted more from this book, and it was just not my favorite, but 3.5 stars, still an entertaining read. So that is everything I read in the second half of May. If you have read any of these books, or if you're interested in any of these books, let me know. I'd be happy to chat more about them down below. And thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.